Welcome back to Inside the Pylon, a Midwest college football podcast, joined as always by Clinton Boring. My name is Ryan Sadkoviak. You guys are listening here to part two of our four-part We're Not Going Live and Taking a Break series today. We are talking grades for the 2024 season for the Big Ten teams. Clinton, sir, how are you doing tonight?
I'd be doing better if the Chiefs were losing, as we currently stand in this second reported video. But first of tonight, the Chiefs are ahead at halftime. I don't want the Chiefs to win. The Eagles won, so hopefully the Eagles can give the Chiefs a challenge in the Super Bowl when they get there. Otherwise, I'm good. I checked out the Ohio State championship celebration today. The first 30 minutes was the most boring thing ever because the AD talked, the mayor talked, and the president talked. I was like, can we just get to the people we want to hear, which is Ryan Day and the Blair's? And then shortly after that,
you didn't want to hear Jim Knowles talk?
well, that's the funny thing, Ryan, is I had a vibe that he wasn't going to be there, and then it was confirmed that he was not there, nor was Chip Kelly. However, Chip Kelly was out recruiting quarterbacks this weekend, so
Chip Kelly's going to the NFL, my dude.
potentially, we'll see. But the one we have firmly gone now is Mr. Jim Knowles. So, Ohio State fans, do not panic. Ohio State or Penn State fans, be happy with what you got. He's a very good defensive coordinator. But he says himself, his system takes 3 years to install fully.
It's complicated.
If you are in an all-in system, all-in win next year, this maybe wasn't the move you wanted to make. Potentially. We'll see. Maybe Franklin lets him install it faster than Day did. I don't know. Apparently, I believe it was Alex Gleitman came out, said there was some consternation between Day and Knowles, most notably after the Oregon game. Day stepped in, said we're changing what we're doing on the defense. He didn't like that. They changed what they did on the defense. It worked. And then apparently Knowles was the first one to contact Penn State after the national championship, not the other way around, and was looking for a way to go home and then a way out. We all know the whole time it wasn't just apparently now that Day he had beef with on the staff. A lot of it was Larry Johnson. And I think those kind of two pieces. I also read to the lunatic fringe portion of Ohio State's fan base, the ones who threaten Ryan Day and his family's lives. That was another factor. And Knowles kind of like, yeah, done with this mess. Gonna go somewhere else.
You mean when dipshits on the internet are openly hostile to you because they got their fucking feelings hurt, that doesn't make you want to stay at a place?
Absolutely, right? So yeah, Knowles is gone. So Buckeye fans, here's what I've got so far on the insight before we get into these, how Ryan's doing in season grades. I would fully expect your front runners right now to be Ohio State calling Jeff Hafley, who was currently...
Buddy, that Jeff Hafley's not coming back to college football. I saw you tweet that, and I wanted to say it to you. I can just tell you now, there's a 0% chance Jeff Hafley railed on college football when he left Boston College. He took a demotion to be a defensive coordinator in the NFL. He's not coming back. There's a 0% chance. I will bet you $1,000 he's not coming back.
Ryan, let me finish. He's not my favorite.
I'm actually not going to listen. I'm not going to bet you $1,000 because I think we all saw Adam Brenneman's post for Penn State defensive coordinator wish list, and the first two were Jim Knowles and Al Golden, and everyone was like, yes, you might as well put Jesus Christ himself at the number one on this list.
Well, they got Jesus Christ himself then. So what I'm saying is...
He took a victory lap today.
They're at least going to call. They're going to call him. They would be dumb not to. But who I think is the favorite amongst the Ohio State writers I've listened to in my own thoughts is Matt Guerrieri, I think is how you say his last name, who was their safeties coach this year, who our friend Kirk gave us some insight from the dark webs of Virginia Tech that Virginia Tech was targeting him for defensive coordinator. Day commented about Guerrieri today during the championship celebration and said that Guerrieri is one of the brightest young minds and is going to be a star. So that sounds like a potential promotion there to me if they don't potentially swing Jeff Hafley. If he's happy in the NFL, certainly why would you come back? And then I would say you're also, someone suggested Luke Fickell. That would be a hell of a, that would be a Chip Kelly-esque move.
I was going to say, you should never say never after what Chip Kelly did.
Yes.
But I think the Chip Kelly situation was a little different than Luke
Fickell. More
Fickell.
dire. And I think Fickell wants to stay a head coach until he's fired, and then maybe he would take a step down. Other names I've seen were also Jim Leonhard. You and I talked about that with Notre Dame today, but apparently you mentioned and I've seen he doesn't like to recruit, so I don't know where you'd want to go that route. They've also talked about, people have said, promoting James Laurinaitis, which is fine. He's the legend that's there, but he's only really been a coach for 3 years? GA
2
for
years.
2, linebackers coach officially for 1.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, because
So,
yep.
As brilliant as he may be, do you want him to run your defense?
Well, also that's like maybe if you were Cincinnati, you go that route and take a chance on him. Not Ohio State.
Not coming off a national championship either.
Well, I don't.
So I would say Matt Guerrieri will be likely the defensive coordinator for Ohio State. So keep your eyes peeled for that, Ohio State fans. Now that little segment is over, Ryan, how are you today?
Oh, just wonderful. No, I was I texted Erwin. I was like, how much did Jim Knowles hate Larry Johnson that he went out of his way to be like, please get me out of here to James Franklin?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's amazing, right? And Larry's one of those guys who's been around for forever, also a Penn State coach. He has 2 national championships with Ohio State, but he's very much of the urban mold, being it's his way or the highway, and he doesn't want to change. And that's where, it's not that I don't love the guy or what he's done for Ohio State. I have pined for a couple years saying he needs to be gone because he's inflexible. And he has survived, and now Jim Knowles is gone. So we'll see what happens. There's still a potential that Larry retires, and then Ohio State needs to fill the D-line role as well. But you are correct. How much did Knowles have to hate that situation to peace out? Or how much did he not like Ryan Day telling him, this is what we're doing on your defense now?
And I mean, to be fair, he also got a thick raise as well. It's not like he left and took a pay cut. He got paid.
And everything I heard is Ohio State had either the exact same or more of an offer on the table to keep him. So if it was more than that money, then yes. I mean, I think he was ready to tap out. He is from Philly, so that does bring him home to an extent. So maybe that's a tie there. But I think it was more of, kind of tired of this shit, and I'm out.
I mean, he feel like, so 3 years is a long time to be a coordinator anywhere. Like that's
what his deal is at Penn State, 3 years.
You just got to wonder with a guy like that who's widely regarded as one of the best coordinators in college football, why is he not getting head coach consideration, or why does he not want to be a head coach?
He's too old.
And that I mean,
that was the talk when Duke's job opened up last year, was that Knowles is too old.
59?
I don't know, man. That's what the verbiage was. He's a little bit too old for what some teams are aiming for.
I guess, but you also got to think maybe there's a personality thing here that is why he doesn't want to be a head coach, or why people don't think he can be a head coach at a Power 4 role, and maybe that's why he keeps jumping to defensive coordinator jobs. Maybe he's a guy that just wears out on other people.
Yeah.
To kind
sometimes
of play
too,
advocate.
Is it the thirst of a challenge? Like, you conquered Ohio State, won a natty, and now Penn State is assembling an arms race, and
it could be
try to get them there. But the problem is, Ohio State was all in this year after they've had Knowles for 3 years. As we just mentioned, Penn State is all in year 1 of Jim Knowles.
Yeah.
So that's the tough part here. Penn State didn't need Jim Knowles. It's a luxury to get him.
No, but I mean, you also have to think too, like, what was Ohio State's defensive personnel 3 years ago? It's always been good. It was not this good.
It was not Caleb Downs.
And also,
he was developed 4-year men.
He was also coming into an Ohio State defensive situation that I wouldn't necessarily call it dire, but they sucked, man. That was not a good defense.
For 2 years straight. Thank you, Kerry Coombs.
He's coming into a Penn State defense that has been quite good now for the last couple of years. So, not
going to be some heavy expectations
and
right away.
And there's something to be said too. Like, I get a scheme like that takes a lot longer to install because it's more complicated. But when you have older veteran players, they're able to pick up on that stuff a lot easier than, especially if you stay at Ohio State and you know you're going to be turning over a fair amount of that roster, even though a lot of it had been there. Just thinking like, okay, now I got to teach all these guys this. Maybe I don't know.
Ryan, I would expect something we only saw just this year for 2 games, I believe Purdue and Northwestern. I fully expect Penn State and James Franklin to give Knowles the full reins, and he will be back to using the jack position.
I can see that.
Guarantee it. So it'll be a very interesting matchup, I believe, on November 1st when the Penn State Nittany Lions come into Columbus. And we'll see what happens. Can they get over the hump?
It will be. It makes Penn State was already going to be probably the most fascinating team in college football for me next year, and this makes it more
It's even
so
more
much
now.
we won't talk about it here. We'll talk about it in our next episode, which you guys will hear next week, which is our early Big Ten. I don't know if you want to call them power rankings, but an early
Way
look
too early
ahead,
power rankings.
an early look ahead to the Big Ten in 2025 and how we anticipate the conference stacking up, which is totally going to be informed because we've totally done deep dives on these teams already. But we'll talk about that next week. Today we
It's
are
just the tip of the iceberg until we get to spring previews.
yeah, it's just I'm sure that they won't change
Just
at all,
the
and
tip.
we'll stick. We'll stick with them. But today we're kind of officially wrapping up 2024 by grading the 17 Big Ten teams on their performance this past season. How do you want to go? What do you want to do? Do you want to
Well,
go down the standings? Do you want to go alphabetical order? I didn't write these in
I am
alphabetical order. I did
I
this in a
didn't
really
either, but
messed up way.
so I really wanted to differentiate this on my doc here, and I thought that doing an underline underneath these would look fine. And now I'm looking at it, and it looks horrific.
Oh boy.
And I can read it, but I just took it away.
Okay.
I started with the national champs. Actually,
Okay.
I started with the two teams in the national champ because I did grade Notre Dame.
I gotcha. Okay, will you just like go ahead and you can introduce the teams because mine, I did my early power rankings for next year and then I just wrote the grade next to it. So mine is all in a weird discombobulated
Yeah.
order. So
So let's start with the aforementioned Ohio State Buckeyes, the now defending national champs of 2024. Final season grade, Ryan. I thought a little bit about that one. They had the national title win, but they had the loss to Michigan and still no Big Ten title. So in theory, they whiffed on 2 of their 3 goals they had for the year. But in my opinion, the national championship salvaged the season and trumps all. So I gave Ohio State just an A. I did not give them an A plus. I gave them an A. Had they not won the national title, they probably would have been like a B plus. But I gave Ohio State an A for winning the Natty.
I did the exact same thing and I used the exact same rationale because
Mhm.
I mean, if you sit there and you look, okay, if our 3 goals are beat Michigan, win a Big Ten, win a national championship, okay, you only met 1 of 3. But it's kind of like when you're in a class and you have like 2 midterm exams and then a final, and one midterm is 20%, the other midterm is 20%, and then the final exam counts for 50%, and then you have like 10% for busy work in there or whatnot. Ohio State did all their busy work. Sure, maybe they didn't pass their 2 midterm examinations, but when you
Dude, they
come,
effing failed the one midterm.
they did,
Like
they did,
straight 0.
they
They
did.
got their name right. I don't even know if they got their name right. on that.
What's it? You get like 100, like 300 points on the SAT for writing your name or something like that. They even got their name wrong against Michigan. But I mean, you come out, you have that playoff run, and like, I think and I get Ohio State fans are weird in the sense of what they prioritize, but if like you look at the season overall as a whole, not only do you have arguably the most incredible playoff run in the history of the sport, but like during the regular season, you also beat Penn State and Indiana.
Hmm?
Like that's a freaking great season, and I get that it's going to be clouded a little bit because you lost to Michigan and then didn't get to play for a conference title for that, but it'd be one thing too if they like took the Penn State path to the national title or the Texas path where it was like great, you beat Clemson, you beat Arizona State, and then you beat Texas or Penn State or Notre Dame or whatever, and then beat the other in the national title game where it's like you got a cakewalk there. They did not get a cakewalk there at all.
I said it before the playoff once the teams were announced. If Ohio State won it, it was emphatic they were the best team in the country because they
For
had
sure.
the hardest path to get there.
For sure. Yep.
And they made it. So real quick, I did my grading expectations. My grading from expectations, like what we thought about through the season before the season to actually how it actually played out. So I just didn't go final grade.
Oh no,
on,
no,
hey,
no,
you
for sure.
finished here.
That's what I like. Kind of like
Okay.
grading on a curve, right? Like it's
Yep.
based on your. So like, I mean, we'll get into it a little bit, but someone like Indiana, for example, I gave an A plus to because based on expectations. But we'll get to Indiana a little bit.
Yep.
But yeah, it didn't feel right giving Ohio State an A plus, given that they also didn't win the Big Ten nor beat their best rival. But I think an A is more than warranted in this situation.
Absolutely. All right. The national runner-up, Notre Dame, Fighting Irish. I gave them an A minus. So, runner-up, they had the tremendous bounce back after the NIU loss. How many did they run off, Ryan? 13 straight? 14? After that?
13 in a row.
Yeah. So they overcame numerous injuries, and they still made the title game. They could have folded, stretched the game out to a 4-quarter game. There's numerous times in this season this could have went awry for Notre Dame, right? They could have tripped up against the Service Academy. They could have tripped up against Georgia Tech. We watched Georgia Tech bite Miami and damn near bite Georgia. So, as you mentioned, preseason, this wasn't the typical daunting Notre Dame schedule, perhaps, as like the beginning of next year is. But a loss to a MAC opponent could have derailed this season, and everything they had to fight through to get there. A- for me, maybe because I don't know where I had them in my initial playoff. I certainly had them. I think I had them Final Four. But A- for me.
This is unequivocally an A, and I would be tempted to go A+ as well. Like, if you look preseason expectations for this team, I think most people, I mean, what was their over-under win total was either 10 or 10.5. So even with losing to NIU, their regular season was a success. I get that the black stain of NIU is going to cloud some people's perception on it, but it's one of those things that's like, at that point, it's like, who gives a shit who you lost to? You're still in the playoff. So preseason expectations for Notre Dame, for me, was host a first-round playoff game, win said first-round playoff game, and then anything after that kind of was gravy. I think that them getting, and this is no disrespect to Indiana, I think like the first round playoff game needed to come against a quote unquote name brand team. And as good as Indiana was this year, there wasn't the name brand team.
It's not a name brand. Nope.
For the goalpost kind
maybe not yet.
No, maybe not yet, for sure. So the goalposts move on that one a little bit, and then it becomes like, all right, well, you really probably need to beat Georgia for us to be happy with the season. So you not only beat Georgia, you beat Penn State as well. You win 2 New Year's 6 bowl games, plus a playoff game. That's 3 bigger postseason wins than Brian Kelly had in his entire 12-year tenure. You could go back to Charlie Weiss, Ty Willingham, and Bob Davie, too. That is 3 better postseason wins than Notre Dame has had under their previous 4 coaches combined. Wait, did I do that math? Davie, Willingham, Weiss? Yeah, previous 4 coaches combined. Crazy. I'm sure there were some Notre Dame fans who thought we could win a national title this year, or we can make the national title game this year. And I think that part of my mind was like, if everything goes right for Notre Dame this year, they can. The thing is, not everything went right for Notre Dame this year on the injury front. And we talked about this a little bit last week on the episode you guys heard. The what if Notre Dame stayed healthy throughout the course of the season? So for me, it was an unequivocal successful season, as bitter as it was at the end.
Absolutely. Next team on the docket, the number 1 team for the majority of the country for the majority of the season. Number 1 team in the country for the majority of the season, the Oregon Ducks. B+ for me.
Interesting.
Undefeated regular season, Big Ten title, then they fell on their face in the Rose Bowl. So I gave them a B+ because I think they hit their expectations of maybe where they should be. I think a lot of people had Ohio State, Oregon, Big Ten championship. They had them either undefeated or 1 loss coming out of the regular season. So I think they achieved those goals. But what I think where it fell was the expectations, right? And so why I dropped you to a B+. You were not, I mean, if you were expected to lose to Tennessee or Ohio State, you certainly weren't expected to lose in that manner. You got dismantled. You looked like you didn't know how to play football. And after such an epic first season in the Big Ten, which Duck fans should absolutely be proud of, I couldn't give them an A because I felt like they fell short of where they needed to be in the playoffs. So I gave them a B+.
Clinton, I still gave him an A.
That's fair.
Am I an easy grader?
I think you might be. You're one of those professors that people like to take your class because you're going to give everybody A's.
I try not to be a prisoner of the moment with this kind of stuff, and I get that for a lot of people, what they're going to remember this Oregon team by is what happened in the Rose Bowl, where they just got absolutely eviscerated. That's going to be the lasting memory of this Oregon team for a lot of people. But in terms of win percentage, technically, Clinton, they were the best team in the country this year. What was that? What was that?
Finished with 1 loss. What was that team?
What was that thing that said where the Oregon's actually our national champion?
So yes. Well, they were the only team to go undefeated in the regular season, and then the only team to finish the season with 1 loss. Everybody else was 2 or more.
And it was like, I know they had. I mean, the first game against Ohio State was a close win, and you could argue that maybe they probably should have lost that game if Jeremiah Smith doesn't get called for OPI or Will Howard slides a second earlier. And I know they had a close call against Wisconsin at the end, and I know they started the year doing whatever the hell they were doing against Idaho and Boise State. But I mean, they had a really good regular season otherwise. Not a lot of clunkers. I mean, they beat the crap out of a bunch of pretty good teams, made it look easy. They
Into the big house, blitz them.
they beat a pretty good Illinois team. They beat a playoff Boise State team. They won the Big Ten in year one. They beat Penn State on the way there. What do they have? Wins over three playoff teams this year? I mean, it was a really good year for them. And I know for a lot of people, the expectation was get to the national championship. And I know that not winning a playoff game, maybe if we're going to be critical, we amend this to an A- because they didn't win a playoff game, even though they technically got to the quarterfinals by getting the first round bye. But I think going undefeated in the regular season and winning the Big Ten in year one, there's something to be said for that for sure. And I know it didn't end the way that they wanted, but it was still a really good season for Oregon for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, man, it's just a massive amount of coverage teams here we're running through to start because they all made the playoffs. The Penn State Nittany Lions, hailing from Happy Valley, an 11-1 regular season. As we joked about the Taylor Swift song "Feeling 22," that Penn State feels 10-2. They did not hit 10-2 this year. They did finish with 2 losses, but that was a postseason loss. 11-1 regular season.
Big. 3 losses.
They had 3?
Yeah, they lost the Big Ten title game.
2 in postseason play. The joke was 10-2 in the regular season.
Yeah.
11-1 regular season. Big 10 title appearance. 2-1 in the playoffs. And then a loss in the semifinal. I'm still at a wait and see with them, Ryan. I know they have the 2 playoff wins. But Joel Klatt and other notable college football writers, talkers, whatever you want to call them, they still don't have the win over someone that's as talented or more talented than them. When they meet someone that's even or better, they don't beat them. So for this coming year, so wait and see for me. But for this past season, A-, Penn State Nittany Lions. Hell of a year. Hell of a year.
See, I gave him a B+ because did your opinion on Penn State or James Franklin change at all this year? Either better or worse?
Slightly better.
I don't know that it changed for me at all.
Yeah.
I think
I'm giving them slightly better just because we say you can't win a big game. I get it. They were more talented than Boise, more talented than SMU, but they were playoff games.
Sure.
So I'm giving them a slightly better, but I'm still wait and see.
Well, and that's why I think I lean B+ here, because over the course of the regular season, really the only team worth a damn that you beat was or played within. Wait, who did they? They didn't even really beat anyone in the regular season.
No.
You played Ohio State and you lost. And I get that was a good close game.
Minnesota at Minnesota?
Yeah, but okay. Again, a team you should beat. And that was probably a game that was closer than it should have been.
Yeah, but that's the point, right?
And
they don't beat anyone that's more talented than them.
You looked good losing to Ohio State and losing to Oregon and losing to Notre Dame. But at a certain point, that can't be your thing, is we looked good in losses. This is very Brian Kelly Notre Dame. Oh, well, we look good losing to Georgia. Ah, we look good losing to Georgia. Oh, we were a 2-point conversion away from tying Deshaun Watson and Clemson in the rain. That can't be your thing if you're going to be a top 10 team, a top 5 team. They met expectations for me. We figured they would be. I picked 10-2 before the season. They went 11-1. They didn't lose a game they shouldn't, but they also didn't win a game that they shouldn't have won either. They get to the playoff. You get the beneficiary of an easy path. Let's not make any bones about it. That was an easy path playing SMU and Boise, but you took care of business and you look good doing so. You earned being one of the 4 last teams standing, but then you played a team that could punch you in the mouth, and they punched you in the mouth in the second half when you had control of that game. You had every opportunity to close that game out in the first half, and you couldn't do it. You let them back in the game. You gave them a pulse, and then you gave the game away late.
Yep.
So for me, it's just, that's what I expect from Penn State. I expect them to beat teams that they should beat and not beat teams they shouldn't beat. And that's how I'm going to maintain an opinion of them until they show otherwise. And this is going to be really funny next week when we talk about our preseason power rankings, because I'm kind of going to contradict myself here, but I thought it was a very good season for Penn State, but it's not one that was overwhelmingly needle moving, is how I would phrase that.
Yeah. Ryan, I have a tidbit of mildly breaking news.
Okay.
Per your buddy, Pete Sampson.
Oh boy.
Former Rutgers head coach Chris Ash is now a front runner for Notre Dame's defensive coordinator.
Oh.
Previous stops at Wisconsin,
Didn't he coach
Arkansas,
Ohio State?
Ohio State, and Texas. His most recent time as DC was Texas in 2020.
Oh.
So I don't think he's been out of coaching. I think he's in like one of those staff analyst type roles, or has been with somebody. I feel like he's been in the NFL. He might have been with the Jags, and then the Jags just cleaned house. That sounds right to me. But yes, my brother-in-law just sent that to me. A tweet that was saying he has now entered the fray. Chris Ash was a great defensive coordinator. I would say no on him to Ohio State because he's very much like an urban style guy, and I don't see that with Day, so I don't know how that would go with Marcus Freeman. Great defensive mind, but I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
You're here first, folks, even though you won't hear this episode for 2 weeks.
Hear this in 2 weeks and be like, that's not who they hired at all.
So that's pretty good. All right.
Okay.
Now to the next Big Ten playoff team, the Indiana Hoosiers, the Fightin' Sigs. 11-1 regular season. They defeated one big name this year, the Michigan Wolverines, although it was a down season for the Wolverines. They had 2 losses overall, and they were to the national champ and the runner-up. Now, you can look at that as a half glass full or a half glass empty approach. Depends on how you want to see it. They had a 5.5 win projection. They way overachieved.
Doubled it.
They set a new win total record, having never won more than 9 games in a season. And they set records along the way, right, Ryan? Is like 4 different ones for different marks of wins. Mm-hmm. Super impressive year one for Coach Sig. Also, if you think about how much more impressive it was that Curtis Work played this season on a torn ACL.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder why he didn't run.
Yeah, no kidding.
Now that we know that. So I am 100% absolutely A+ for the Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah, I didn't think twice about this one. This was a grand slam home run, A+ for me. And again, this is in relation to expectations, right? We talked preseason. We were higher on Indiana than I think a lot of people. We thought they'd be a bowl team. I don't think we thought they'd be a playoff team. So can't really take Can't take a victory lap on that one. They're going to be a fascinating team to watch next year. Mm-hmm. Can they take it forward? But
dude, I can't wait to dig into them for spring previews.
Great.
They've got some fun transfers in again.
Mm-hmm. Great first season. Great first season for Sigs.
And I think Sig is also not just getting G5 guys this time. He's pulling in Power 4 guys.
Yeah, listen, man, you have a season like that gives you cred.
I say screw you and I do in the spring preview. We got to bring Sammy on for our 20-minute episode.
I'd do that.
And let him talk about the Hoosiers.
I'd let him do it. I'd probably say
all right, Ryan. The no longer defending champ Michigan Wolverines, as a new one has been crowned. Mm-hmm. Not quite the season that they had hoped for in 2024, one that you and I kind of saw coming, especially after talking with our guy Anthony Broom and the fact that he told us, a week before the season started, they're still teaching Orji how to play quarterback. Mm-hmm. And we saw how that worked out for the whole season.
Not great.
So major regular season fall from 2023. They went undefeated. They weren't even close this year. They had a dire quarterback situation that just absolutely killed them and plagued them the entire season. But the Wolverines did end on a high note. They beat Ohio State for the 4th straight year without Colston Loveland and Will Johnson. And then they beat Bama without Colston Loveland, Will Johnson, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, and name some other people that didn't play. They played essentially with the team that's going to be next year, minus quarterback, and beat Alabama, who I believe played most people, right?
Yeah.
Which seems to be the Alabama trend.
That's, to be fair, though, Jalen Milroe for 7.5 minutes in the first quarter when it was raining forgot that he's supposed to hold on to the football, and that was pretty much the margin.
Yep. So big win in the ReliaQuest Bowl for the Wolverines. So given how their season ended and also the addition of signing Bryce Underwood, I know this does not have anything to do with how they played, but the course of the season, I gave them a B-.
Yeah, I gave them a B- as well. I thought about going lower, but we talked about this last week, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I don't know what that would be in relation to when this is going to drop, but we kind of wrote Michigan off there for a minute because it was kind of like you need to beat Northwestern just to make a bowl game there for a hot second. And I think we all thought going into the Ohio State game that they were going to get pantsed in front of God and everyone, and then they ended up winning. And I think if they got their ass kicked against Ohio State to finish 6-6 and then played, Bowling Green in a bowl game, then we're probably having a little bit of a different thought process on this Michigan team. But as ugly as it was, you beat Ohio State and then you beat Alabama. You finish 8-5 in a year where you were ass on offense. That's not too bad. I mean, and the other side of that coin, though, is you also are losing 4 first-round picks and you only went 8-5. That's probably not the best.
Scary.
So that'll be interesting to see next year. But I agree with the B-.
Because they're also going to lose Josiah Stewart.
Yep.
And I'm blanking on the other guy's name. I believe they're losing both ends as well.
Rod Moore's coming back. Rod Moore's going to be back.
Okay. So Stewart, though, big piece for them. All right. Illinois. The Fighting Illini. A for me. Similar win projection as Indiana. They have finished the season with 9 wins. Their season goal per Bert Bielema was to get back-to-back bowl games, which they did. It is the 8th time in program history that Illinois has won at least 9 games in a season, and the first time they've done so since Juice Williams and the 07 Fighting Illini, who knocked off Ohio State. And they finished ranked in all polls and then capped the season with a win over the South Carolina Gamecocks, who many SEC fans thought should have just been gifted the playoff.
A for me as well. I think the difference between them and Indiana is Indiana got into the playoff and got their 11th win in the regular season, and I guess in Illinois only had 10. Math is hard. 2 more wins in the regular season for Indiana, so I guess that's the difference for me here. Great end of the season, though. Get it? That's a big win against South Carolina, and that's going to bolster them into next year well. But I agree, A for them. Very close to an A+, but we're saving that for you made the playoff when you were only supposed to go 6-6.
Yeah, we're dotting our I's with Indiana and Illinois here. I'm also juiced to jump into Illinois and what this team has coming next year.
Yep.
Rutgers.
Ugh.
B. Now. Feels like they played 3 different seasons, Ryan. Started 4-0, went 0-4, finished 3-1. Back-to-back bowls for the first time since 2013, 2014. If I had to just go on the middle season, I would have made them lower. But how they started, how they finished, I gave them a solid B.
I gave them a C. We talked about this team preseason based on their schedule as one that could win 9 games. They did not. They looked really, really bad in that middle part of the season, like dastardly bad. And I get it started good, but it was kind of fool's goldy. Like, look at that Washington game. I think they got outgained like 2-1 and benefited because Washington couldn't stop missing field goals and taking penalties, things of that nature. It was not a very pretty 7-6 season, and given the preseason expectations, I thought they fell a little bit short. So it was a fine season. Again, it's still Rutgers. We're not acting like this is Michigan here or anything like that. But I was pretty high on them preseason, and they had one of the best running backs in college football, and they kind of wasted a season from him.
Yep, and if you got your hopes up for this season, don't get them up for next season. That's all I can say as a precursor to our early projections.
Pretty much.
Going to Minnesota, the Golden Gophers. And now you're going to laugh at me for this. I gave Minnesota a lower grade than Rutgers. I gave them a B-.
Oh.
They projected 5.5, finished with 8 wins. However, I'm just sitting here with Minnesota, and I felt like they could have done so much more. Opening game against North Carolina. Flat as hell. Then they lost. Yeah, you know how the Michigan game went, right? Like that, we could argue till we're blue in the face that they might have got gypped in that game. But the Rutgers loss, I can't give you a better grade than Rutgers when you lost to Rutgers.
That's fair.
And then you should have had the Penn State. Now, Penn State had to run a fake punt essentially to beat you, but damn it, you had them at home. Brosmer impressed me a ton as the season progressed. I'm sure this young gentleman is going to try to enter the draft. I don't know what will happen, but damn if he could have just started a little more in rhythm on week 1. And that's kind of on the coaching staff, right, to have you more ready for that.
Oh, sure.
And it's nothing. I love the Gophers, and I like PJ Fleck. The grade is because I felt like they just left me wanting more. I felt like they could have been more.
That's fair. I gave them a B, but I don't hate the B- grade just because I had a weird relationship with Minnesota this year because I think going into coming out of spring, I thought they were going to be bad. And then Ryan
Mhm.
Burns talked us into kind of thinking, oh, maybe they'll probably make a bowl game. I mean, 7-5 in the regular season is not fantastic. That to me is just okay. You basically met expectations, and then they win their bowl game. I don't remember who they played in their bowl game. I think they're playing someone who had a bunch of opt outs though.
Mhm.
They're playing Virginia Tech, and Virginia
Mhm.
Tech's like third team quarterback was playing.
They stink. Sorry, Kirk.
Yes, so I mean, you get to 8 wins. That's a good season. Again, it's Minnesota. We're not talking about Penn State here, so
Yep.
I'll give them a B for their effort this season. But B minus. I think distinction without a difference.
Another team, not starting with an I, but another team who could be very sneaky come 2025 season.
Maybe.
The Nebraska Cornhuskers. B. 6 wins. It's under the projected 7.5. I could have been more harsh on the grading, but I think you and I talked ourselves more into the Nebraska hype than probably what was there.
Perhaps, yeah.
They got back to a bowl game. That's a hell of an accomplishment. The season could have been an A with a 5-1 start, but then they finished 1-5.
Yeah.
So not a good finish. Raiola, though, he does look like the real deal. Progress under Matt Rule continues in year 2, so we'll see what year 3 brings. Get Raiola some weapons. We'll again talk about that as we get into the spring, but a B for the Nebraska Cornhuskers for me.
Yeah, I agree with the B there. In the sense that they made a bowl game and they won a bowl game, that was a very fantastic season. That has to be goals 1 and 2 met for sure, but the process for how they got there was atrocious.
Rough.
Again. I mean, you get to hang your hat on the Colorado win, and maybe that, you beat Colorado before they kind of ascended into their full form, but you still get credit for that win. But
you could argue Colorado has started ascending into their form in the second half of that game because Nebraska didn't do anything in the second half.
Also true. But starting 1-5 and you barely make a bowl game by the skin of your, you started 5-1. Sorry, finish 1-5.
Mm-hmm.
You start 5-1 and you still barely make a bowl game by the skin of your teeth. I mean, that's not great. I think there was a big opportunity there for them to really take some year 2 momentum into year 3. And I mean, maybe you still save some of it by getting 2 and winning a bowl game, but boy, that second half of the year was, it left you wanting a little bit. And I mean, maybe now with Dana Holgerson being full-time OC next year, that the offense will not be whatever the hell it was this year. But
yeah. Mr. Ryan, could you do me we'll do this one last time and one last favor if it is available. Can you get our favorite sound for our favorite Big Ten running back ready?
Oh, I absolutely can. I can.
And I'm going to start with Michigan State before we go to Iowa, just so you have time.
Oh,
Michigan State.
You should have just texted me.
I'm sorry. We have time now. Michigan State. C. High expectations for the first year of Smith, and they feels like they just fell short. Aiden Childs was a roller coaster. You didn't know what you were going to get game to game. Peaks, valleys, low peaks, low valleys, not low peaks. Well, I guess it could be low peaks too if it didn't get high enough. And I'm just kind of unsure of expectations for 2025. So C for the Michigan State Spartans.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went C- for Michigan State.
He's just sitting back there casually like,
no, I'm
just ghosting me here.
No, sorry. I went C-. I thought, I mean, it's such a hard spot to navigate because I'm not entirely sure that a bowl game was expectations year 1. You kind of wanted to see that this was heading in the right direction, and 5-7's a okay first year, but I was not super impressed with Aiden Childs this year, and I was really hoping to see some growth with him throughout the course of the season, so that way going into 2025, you're very confident in him being the guy, and I'm not sure that we're there with that. What?
I swear to God, the Chiefs get all the breaks possible.
What happened?
Josh Allen jumps over to get the first down, and he fumbles the ball while he jumps over. Now, it appears the Bills have it back, but my God, they get so lucky. All right, now to the Iowa Hawkeyes. Kind of tough to grade this team, however. The last time before our favorite back from the Big Ten goes to the NFL, Caleb Johnson was the only elite part of this team this year. They did get some offensive improvement. However, 3 of their 4 losses should have been wins. They choked the Iowa State game away. I don't know what the hell they did against UCLA and Michigan State. I think we both might have projected them 10-2, maybe 11-1, given their schedule.
Yep.
Defense didn't feel the same either, despite what our guy Jeff said. I felt like the defense was not the same this year, so a C+ for the Iowa Hawkeyes.
That's the exact same grade that I gave them, and for the exact same reason. We talked about them as a dark horse playoff team, and they were not. They were definitely not. I remember being shocked preseason when we saw the 8-win total.
Mm-hmm. We were both jaws hit the floor. Remember what I did say, Ryan. Now, Iowa didn't hold up their end of the bargain, but I said if Iowa went 10-2, that a 9-3 Ole Miss would get in over them. Well, hot damn, I got a piece of that right because people were arguing that 9-3 Ole Miss should have been in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Just the SEC bias. All right, we're going to travel out. We're going to get on a plane and fly out west for the next 2, maybe the next 3. We're going to go to the UCLA Bruins.
Yeah, might as well do them all.
Could have been a worse year, right? And a worse grade. A spunky team. They showed grit. They had a very difficult schedule. And for a first-time head coach, after Chip Kelly leaves, they did lose the 3 playoff teams, Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Won 4 of their last 6. So some positive momentum heading into 2025. I gave UCLA a C+.
I gave them a B, which
Nice.
might be again grading on a little bit of a curve. But I remember distinctly after they looked kind of bad against Hawaii in week 1 or week 0, whenever that was, us sitting there saying, "Is this team going to go 1-11 this year?" They almost made a bowl game, man.
Mm-hmm.
They played some tough teams. They played some pretty good teams tough.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that, and apparently without a functioning offensive coordinator because they fired Bieniemy after the season. So I thought a really impressive first season for Deshaun Foster. I'm intrigued to see how if it was just kind of they got lucky or won a couple games that maybe they're not going to moving forward, but excited to see where he takes this in year 2.
Absolutely. All right, let's stay in the state of California. The USC used to be Mighty Trojans, now the Baby Trojans? I don't know. All the fan talk we heard, Ryan, in the preseason about a Trojan takeover in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten's not ready for the Trojans, and they fell flat on their face. Numerous, this is their whole entire season, numerous fourth quarter collapses. What this season could have been if you guys could have just finished a game. The best Big Ten win they had, Ryan? Rutgers. LSU win to open the season kind of lost its luster when Brian Kelly and his boys took a deep nosedive in the SEC. They did have some defensive improvement. Still a great hire, Danton Lynn. Great job holding on to him. It's hilarious that I'm now reading Penn State fans saying, or USC fans, we did such a great job holding on to Danton Lynn. It shows I'm like, bro, Penn State wasn't interested. They heard Jim Knowles was interested 3 weeks ago, and they came right after him. They didn't give a shit about Danton Lynn. C- for the USC Trojans.
That's exactly what I gave them as well, and for the exact same reason. I mean, especially starting the season off, beating LSU. Like that for me seemed to not, I don't want to say necessarily shift expectations because I think I don't want to speak for you, but I thought that they would probably be an 8-4 team this year.
I think we said 8-4, 7-5.
But then you win that game. And to me, how I looked at their schedule was you should probably win the 8 games that are not LSU, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Michigan. And they just couldn't even do that, man. You go out, they beat LSU. It's like, okay, you got one of these. And then you just kind of fell apart. It was not a good season. It was not, I mean, year 3 of Lincoln Riley, it seems like they've taken a step back each year. A bunch of their receivers left. Like, that's just weird vibes in LA right now.
Starting quarterback.
Bench your starting quarterback, just who wasn't even the problem. Like, he was fine. Maybe he's not the best fit for the Lincoln Riley offense, but I don't know.
Is Jaden Maeva, though, either?
I don't know. Just weird vibes in LA.
All right, the last newcomer West Coast team, the Washington Huskies, and our friend Roman Tomashoff told us at the beginning of the season, guys, I don't expect this far of a drop off from the wide receiver core, as everyone's saying, and that far of a drop off from the team from last year. Well, that didn't exactly pan out. They did lose a ton from their 2023 season team, who finished as runner-up. They were 4-5 in their first year in the Big Ten, lost both the rivalry games, and as we talked about, a little more early to mid-season versus late, I think, but their on-the-field discipline issues, I gave them a C.
I gave them a C as well. Stop it.
Hey, listen, my grades have been done for almost a week, so I'm assuming you copied me.
I did them this afternoon, but I think for Washington, this was a very difficult one to rank, just because they lost so much from last year. So even though, like, you're bringing in a really good coach in Jed Fish, and he was bringing a lot of guys in through the portal, like, it was a total rebuild job, just a complete and total rebuild job from what this team was last year. And I wouldn't necessarily say they met expectations. Again, you touched on the discipline issues. I thought they lost some games early in the year that they should have won, but we'll see what year 2 has in store for the Huskies.
Damon Williams Jr., man.
Of
course, the Chiefs get the call. Of course, the ref marks him short and they give him the ball back.
I'm sorry.
Whatever.
Are they still reviewing that same call that happened like 5 minutes ago?
No, they've got the ball now because they said Allen was short, even though I thought it looked like from the sky view he had the first. All right, Ryan, now we get to the bottom feeders. Let's head to the good old Mistake by the Lake temporary stadium, who we haven't talked about after we went on a massive run in the spring of mentioning them every episode, the Northwestern Wildcats. D+ for me. They finished with 1.5 wins below their preseason projection, and their 2 Big Ten wins came against, hold your phones, people, Purdue and Maryland, who combined to go 1-17 in conference play. All 7 of Northwestern's conference losses were by multiple scores, with 6 of them coming by 3 scores or more. D+.
Okay, I gave him a C-, so we're not too far off there. I don't know. I don't really have any increased rationale for that. I thought that Lausch was pretty good this year, but then they bring in Preston Stone, so maybe they didn't think too highly of him. But
excited for that.
Okay, so
I expected more from we're so used to the Northwestern defense, right?
Oh, for sure.
Even in the first year last year, and it just, I don't know.
Okay, so here's your ND defensive coordinator update. It sounds like Jim Leonhard wants to stay in the NFL. It was rumored earlier this week that they were talking to Jim Leonhard.
Where is he right now?
I think he's with the Broncos.
Okay.
It sounds like there's a couple NFL teams that are after him, either for a position coach or for a defensive coordinator role. So obviously, if a guy wants to stay in the NFL, you touched on it, he was not a fond recruiter. That seemed, plus from a quality of life standpoint too, right? Like college, you don't have an off season. NFL, you at least get some of an off season. So it sounds like, per John Bryce, that's like, if John Bryce is reporting, it's going to happen. It sounds like Chris Ash is going to be a co-OC with Mike Mickens getting a bump to co-OC as well.
Co-DC.
Co-DC. What did I say?
OC.
Okay.
I don't think you want those guys calling your offense.
I don't think that'd be great. Okay. Especially if you already have Denbrock in place. That could be a little awkward. So Mickens gets his bump. Chris Ash, there you go.
To the Chiefs. Damn it.
Did they score?
Yes.
Oh, you're 5 seconds ahead of me there.
There's Taylor Swift. Whatever. All right. Let's keep with the D theme. The Wisconsin Badgers.
Ugh.
I moved them up from an F because I took in consideration of losing Tyler Van Dyke. Big Ten wins were, drumroll please, Purdue.
Oof.
Northwestern.
Oof.
Rutgers. You lost to your rivals Iowa and Minnesota by a combined 49 points.
Not great, Bob.
Talk about shit in the bed. You shit in the bed and then you rolled in it.
Not great, Bob.
Like a dog.
Not great.
Now, again, I did bump him up from the F because of Van Dyke. We don't know what the season would have been if he'd have been there. We could argue that if Wisconsin even has a viable quarterback, they would have knocked off both Penn State and Oregon.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
You know, but they weren't. D for Wisconsin.
Yeah, I gave him a D-. No notes.
Just atrocious season. Luke Fickell, you've got to turn this around, man.
It's not great.
All right, now to the 2 worst teams in the Big Ten, the Maryland Terrapins. The Terrapins had their worst season, Ryan, since Mike Loxley's first year in College Park back in 2019. Terps finished 4-8, well below their preseason projection of 6.5, and they won only one Big Ten game. Ty Felton was a superstar, and you stunk. Best of luck to him in the NFL. F for Maryland.
Oh, wow, you gave him an F. I gave him a D just because it's Maryland. It's like, okay, you stink, but you're still Maryland.
Oh, but I'm going lower than that. Next one.
Can you go lower than an F? I mean, Purdue should Purdue should be relegated to the MAC if we're being completely honest. Yeah, I gave a D to Maryland. They at least had some exciting things on offense this year. They beat USC. That has to be worth something. But yeah, 4-8. That was not a good year.
Another fourth quarter collapse.
Not a good year.
They should have lost.
Not a good year. Can we just do we even have to talk about Purdue?
We do, because we watched an annoying amount of football. We watched them in person, Ryan.
Look, if we're being, I might have watched, short of Notre Dame, Purdue might have been the second most watched team I had this year, just because they kept playing good teams.
Listen, I don't know if this grade's possible because I never got Fs in my life, but I gave them an F-, and if I could give them a G, I would have.
Goddamn shit. That's what G stands for.
Purdue was the worst Power 4 team in the country, blown out in 8 of their 11 losses. I literally have nothing else to say. It was a big pile of stink. F- Purdue.
Well, they gave they played Oregon, Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, and Indiana. They played 5 playoff teams. I'm pretty sure they gave up 250 points in those 5 games.
Mm-hmm. And they're going to be broke as hell this year because everyone left.
Yep. So we'll talk about that next
week. Maybe better on the coach portion, but way off.
Yeah. We'll talk about that next week on our preseason Big Ten Power Rankings, Clinton. I have nothing else to add to that.
No, guys, just wrapping up the show here for the second episode of I called it our bye weeks. Be sure to go hit us up on the socials, ITPCFB on Twitter and Instagram. We keep rolling hot on Instagram. And then don't forget to give us a follow on the YouTube. These will not be live, of course, but they will be uploaded and put into our video section, as we've also been enjoying posting some shorts on YouTube. So find us. That was my dog. I don't know what she's hacking on. But anyways, you can also find us there inside the Pylon Midwest College Football Podcast, or just type in ITP CFB in the search bar. And of course, as always, we are available on all podcast platforms.
All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in again. We will be back with you next week talking 2025, our far too early Big Ten.
We're in 2 minutes.
Power
record the next one.
All right, anyway, bye, guys. We'll see you next week.
See you.